Welcome, tennis fans, to the third episode of Tennis Traverse, Exploring the Game, the podcast that delves into the heart of the tennis world. I'm your host, Ivy J, and today, we're summarizing US Open Week 2, predicting the men's final results, and talking about the aftermath of the US Open. So, a lot of you guys might be surprised that this is coming out on a Sunday. I am actually recording this on a Sunday as well, just because today's afternoon is the men's final, and I want you guys to be able to finish listening to this podcast, and I will be predicting the men's final results in this podcast. So stay tuned. And before I start, please follow me on all of my social media platforms using the @TennisTraverse. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter. Also, follow me on the streaming platform you are using to listen to my podcast right now, and make sure to leave my show a rating. And on YouTube, please comment down below what I can do to make my podcast better, and leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Without further ado, let's get right into today's episode. So I just want to start off with some upset matches and some highlight matches that happened. Note that last week I actually grouped them in one category, but I feel like it's the second week, so there really isn't that much of upset matches going on. It's just some were unexpected, but they're not necessarily upsets. And let's just start with Ben Shelton's 4-set win against Tommy Paul. So a lot of people actually thought that Tommy Paul will do really well in this tournament, and don't be mistaken, I think he did fairly well, but Ben Shelton had this really amazing energy to him, and he just outperformed Tommy Paul. So he actually served two 149 miles per hour serves, which is the second fastest serve in history at the US Open, the first being Andy Roddick at 152 miles per hour. So I think this is a huge improvement for Ben Shelton, and I really didn't expect him to somehow win against Tommy Paul, but I'm really happy for him. And the other one is Caroline Wozniacki's loss against Coco Gauff. So this is Caroline Wozniacki's first Grand Slam after coming back from retirement, and I am really happy that she did fairly well. So she actually won a set against Coco Gauff, but then Coco Gauff turned the tides and actually won the match. But I really liked how Caroline Wozniacki played, and we'll see more of her definitely. The next one was unexpected, which is Iga Swiatek's loss against Jelena Ostapenko. So on my last episode, actually, I talked about how I was surprised that Jelena Ostapenko is still in the tournament, just because she hits a lot of unforced errors and she's quite an unstable player in my opinion. But she actually upsetted Iga Swiatek in a 3-setter. So Iga won the first set, and then Jelena Ostapenko managed to come back. And the last deciding set, Ostapenko actually won by the score of 6-1, which is a huge gap in my opinion. But Iga played really well, and she won Roland Garros, which is the French Open of this year. So I'm happy with her performance. And because Iga lost this match, so Aryna Sabalenka, who I will talk about later, will become the official new WTA world number 1 on Monday, which is a huge achievement. And I'm just really happy for her after all that she's been through. The next match I will talk about is Djokovic's kind of only struggle throughout this whole tournament, which is his match against his fellow Serbian Djir. And it was actually a 5-setter, and Novak was down 0-2. But he managed to do what Novak always does, which is to come back and ultimately win a match, of course. And the thing I find really funny is because he was down 2 sets, so he told the umpire that he wanted to go back for a toilet break. So he went back to his locker room and he kind of gave himself a pep talk in the mirror. And the most funny part is he laughed at himself, which I find really funny because he is down 2 sets and he still have the mindset to laugh about this match results. And he ultimately won the match, which is just super high level of him. And it really stuns me as a tennis player because he has such a good mindset, and when you're playing against a player like him, you cannot ever just lose your concentration because Novak will find that and will ultimately come back. So The next match is Zverev versus Sinner. It was actually a 5-set match. I think both players were kind of nervous at the start of the match, but as the match progressed, they became relaxed and it was a good match. The next one is Rybakina's loss against Kritia. It was a 3-setter, but I really didn't expect Elena to lose just because I was there during fan week and I saw her hit and she was hitting really well, extremely well even. So I really didn't expect her to lose, but it's the beauty of tennis. And the other match was Keys versus Pegula. It was a surprisingly easy win for Keys. I really didn't expect it because Pegula was really hot coming into the US Open. She won a title in Canada, I think, and she was doing really well. But I think it's because of Pegula's schedule. So she's not only participating in a women's singles tournament, she is also participating in the women's doubles tournament with Coco Gauff, as well as a mixed doubles tournament. So it's really an insane schedule if you come to think about it, of like how many matches she will play throughout this tournament. So in my opinion, it's one of the key factors of why Pegula lost. The next match I will talk about is Peyton Stearns versus Vondrousova. Peyton Stearns played amazing. So I was rooting for Peyton Stearns because the last day of fan week, I actually went with my friends on my tennis team and we got a selfie from Peyton Stearns. So she was actually practicing with Leila Ferdinand. We originally wanted a selfie with Leila, but no hate, she was practicing after this. So she just didn't sign or do selfies with all of us, which is totally fine. And we decided to get a selfie with Peyton Stearns, and she was so nice. And I really was rooting for her after this, and she played so well. So she actually won the first set against Vondrousova, but ultimately she lost in the second two, which I'm totally happy about. I think we'll see more of her later. The next match I will talk about is Zheng Qingwen versus Jabeur. So surprisingly, Zheng Qingwen actually won in 2 sets. This also had to do definitely with Jabeur's sickness that she has been dealing. I just feel really bad for Jabeur because she deserves a Grand Slam for sure. But there has been a lot of factors playing into her run and stopping her from getting her first Grand Slam. But I believe she'll get there, definitely. The next is Ben Shelton, who I already talked about, but for the next round, so after he beat Tommy Paul, he actually beat Tiafoe, which I was so surprised about because Tiafoe was playing amazing. The next match I will talk about is Keys beating Marketa Vondrousova. So this match was unexpected to me because Keys really wasn't doing that well leading up to the tournament. However, Marketa Vondrousova actually won Wimbledon, which is a tournament Grand Slam before the US Open. And I'm just really happy for Marketa Vondrousova as well, even though she lost, because normally sometimes when you win a Grand Slam title, the pressure will get to her, but surprisingly the pressure didn't get to Marketa. She actually played really well and she was feeling really confident and she had a deep run in this year's US Open. The next 2 matches are matches that I think are the best. Well, apart from the women's final, which I will talk about obviously later. So the first match is Sabalenka versus Keys. So Sabalenka actually got bageled in the first set. Bagel means that she actually lost 0-6. However, she managed to come back all the way and actually win the whole match. So during the second set tiebreak, she actually won 7-1, I believe. And the second tiebreak, which is the deciding set, she won 10-5, which is such an amazing performance for her because imagine getting bageled in the first set and still having the mental toughness to come back and win. I really love matches like this because you can see the magical aspect of tennis. The next match I will talk about is Medvedev's win against Alcaraz. I think it was an amazing match, even though it was a 4-setter. It was amazing. Both players were hitting really well, and Alcaraz actually hit one of the shots I believe he hit last year against Sinner, which is the behind the back shot, even though he lost that point. But it was an amazing match. It was highlights after highlights after highlights, and that's it for all of the highlight matches I will talk about. Now we are moving on to the women's finals and my thoughts on it. So Coco Gauff ultimately won after losing the first set, and I thought she played amazing. She was tense at first, of course, because it is her second Grand Slam final, and because she's also playing on home turf, it's really hard because of all the pressure that's built up against her. But she managed to turn that pressure into motivation, and she did super well. In my opinion, this is the best women's final of Grand Slam this year. Both players tried their best. Coco's coverage of the court is actually insane. How she can run from that corner to this corner so easily. It's just insane to me. And I feel really happy for Coco because this is her first Grand Slam and it's on her home turf. And the crowd loves her here. So it's an amazing win for her. On a side note, Kevin Durant, Maria Sharapova, and a lot of famous people are here to support Coco, and I'm just really amazed at how tennis can bring people together. And not just tennis, really, but a love for sport can really unite people together, which I think is really magical. I actually predicted this final in my last episode. Even though I said that Sabalenka will win the title, but ultimately Coco did. However, I actually predicted the final, which I'm super happy about. So if you guys want to listen to that episode, please make sure to listen to it. I talked a lot about the different issues surrounding this year's US Open and other early round upset matches that I think are also worth watching the highlights for. Okay, one more thing before I actually predict the men's final results, which is Naomi Osaka is back. She's my favorite tennis player. I love her. I'm insane for her. And you guys will probably see after she actually come back on court. But she went to the US Open this year, I believe, during the semifinals of Coco's match. And she actually had an interview. And during her interview, she talked about obviously being a mother. And the other part is about how she actually have a really packed schedule for 2024. And she said that somebody will be really excited about it. That somebody is definitely me because I just love seeing her play. And by her coming back into the picture, we never know how she will change how the women's ranking goes because she's an amazing and talented player. So I can't wait for her to obviously get back on tour again. Okay, so enough of me blabbering about the other matches. I will talk now and predict the men's final results. But before I start, obviously, I am going to talk about what the IBM Slam Tracker says. So, in case you guys don't know, the IBM Slam Tracker is an AI that the US Open uses to analyze matches and predict who will win. And before I get into the detailed statistics part, the IBM tracker predicted that Novak will have a 53% chance of winning and Daniil Medvedev will have a 47% chance of winning. And here are just some notable stats I think will play into the match, and I will talk about my view on it. So the first is throughout the semifinals, Medvedev has won 40% of the points returning the first serve, second among players in the field of 128. So this is an amazing record, I think, because both players have amazing return skills. Novak has amazing return skills just because of his experience and how he is obviously significant older. Not that it's a bad thing, it's just he has more experience leading up to the finals and he obviously played more finals than Medvedev. So this match will rely heavily on ability to convert breakpoints in my opinion because both players are amazing returners, so they will generate a lot of breakpoints, but they have to make sure that their game is mentally strong to actually convert those breakpoints and have an early lead for them. The other thing I want to talk about is Medvedev's fastest serve speed is 130 miles per hour compared to Djokovic's 126 miles per hour. So their serves, in my opinion, are relatively the same. So I really can't say that who will be better during their service game. So as I said before, it relies heavily on return of serves. The other thing I want to talk about is in the finals of the 2021 US Open Championships, Medvedev actually defeated Djokovic in 3 sets. So this will be an interesting match. And finally, my prediction. I think Novak will win, not in an easy way because I think he's been struggling a little physically. I think it will be a 5-setter or a 4-setter, and it's going to be an amazing match. So I think all of you guys should try to at least watch the highlights, or if you guys can, try to actually watch the live of this match, because it's going to be extremely fun and it's going to be highlights after highlights after highlights. And the other thing I want to talk about is the aftermath of the US Open. So Arina Sabalenka will become world number 1 even though she lost. Coco Gauff will have a record-breaking world number 3 after her win, and Novak, as I said, will be number 1 regardless, as well as Daniil Medvedev will be world number 3 regardless. Now I'm going to talk about some tournaments that will be fun to watch, and I'm not going to get into the details of it. I'm just going to get into the details of some of the tournaments. The first one is Labor's Cup. So this year's Labor Cup is nothing compared to last year, because last year 4 tennis giants were here. Novak Djokovic, Andy Murray, Rafael Nadal, Roger Federer. And not just that, it was Roger Federer's last tournament. He was playing doubles with Rafael Nadal. So it was just an amazing lineup. So this year's lineup is kind of weak compared to last year's. But Casper Ruud is there, which I'm happy about. And it's going to be definitely full of nostalgic vibes just because Roger Federer will be there. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and I really like these team tournaments because I think it brings out a more competitive side, and I really like seeing how players interact with each other. And then it's the Astana Open, which I believe Novak won last year. And then it's the China Open, which is actually the first ever tennis tournament I went to, and I feel sad about it because obviously now I'm in New York and I can't watch the China Open in person anymore. I have to watch live streams, and I'm not complaining because I have the US Open here now, and I just feel sad because it's my first ever tennis tournament I've been to, and I really want to see how players will play there after not being there since 2019. Now I will talk about some Masters 1000 tournaments, which are tournaments that are worth 1,000 points that will be taking place in October. So the first one is Shanghai Masters in China, which hasn't been going on since 2019, same as the China Open. The next one is Paris Masters, which is an amazing tournament. I believe that last year Holger Rune and Novak Djokovic played in a final where Holger Rune actually won in the 3-set. And in my last episode, I talked about how Holger and his coach Patrick will figure something out after his round 1 loss at the US Open, but I was mistaken. They part ways. But I'm sure that Holger Rune will find some amazing other coach to work with, and Patrick will also find another amazing player to work with. And then in the November of the ATP schedule, it is going to be the Nitto ATP Finals, which is going to be the top 8 players fighting to see who was the best out of them. And then it's the Next Generation ATP Finals, which is also an amazing tournament. On the women's side, some notable tournaments are the Tokyo Open, China Open, and they finally announced where we will be hosting our WTA finals. It's going to be at Cancun, Mexico. They spent forever, I don't know, maybe finding a venue to organize this event, or just announcing this to the public in general, because last year I believe the tournament was in Texas, and because they also announced it late, the attendance rate was really slim, and there were literally no one in the stands. Well, not no one, I'm over exaggerating, but there were just a few people in the stands. And this year I believe that you've released it even later, which really isn't good on the WTA side if they want to promote women's tennis, in my opinion. And that's it for today's episode. This episode was longer than the first episode, shorter than the second episode, but I really hope that you guys enjoyed it. As usual, it was a blast filming it, and please make sure to go watch the men's final that will be going on at 4 p.m. this afternoon. You can watch it on ESPN, I believe, and the channel is 570, so go check that out if you guys have time. And follow me on all of my social media platforms, follow me on all of the streaming platforms, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you guys next Monday. Bye.